Hello, boys and girls, and welcome back. Another episode of Foux and Friends. I got Gabriel and Josh this time, and we're switching it up. We're talking some football, and more specifically, we're talking about the Chicago Bears and their offseason, a team that is not in the playoffs, but still in the national media quite a bit with some of the choices they have to make in the coming months. So, guys, welcome to the program. Anyway, yeah, so let's just do a little roundtable real quick. The elephant in the room is, Caleb Williams or Justin Fields. Gabriel, I'll start with you. What's your piece on that one?
I understand that when you had a number one overall pick in the draft for the second year in a row, like the Chicago Bears had, and you have a lot of talk and hoopla about whether or not they made the right decision last year, passing on the likes of a Bryce Young and a CJ Stroud to acquire DJ Moore and the like. It's kind of hard not to do your due diligence and take a look under the hood and see what makes Caleb Williams so special and dynamic of a player. However, as great as he is, I still see certain similarities as far as flaws when I compare him to Justin Fields. And when I look at that, and I also look at overall makeup, not questioning Caleb Williams' makeup as a competitor, I believe he's a great competitor and has the potential to be a leader. I just feel like with the way that the roster is currently constructed and with the way that Justin Fields, in spite of having two offensive coordinators through his first three seasons, two head coaches through his first three seasons, and having a roster teardown take place in front of his eyes, has still managed to put together some solid years under center for the Bears and kept them in more games than he's actually taken them out of with his play. And I feel like his ability to make pinpoint passes when granted the proper time in the pocket, combined with his ability to make plays in the running game, makes him a tremendous complement and a piece that the Bears can build around, especially once they acquire more talent to put beside him.
Yeah, honestly, the thing that really stands out to me, Caleb Williams has an amazing arm. He's a very, very, very talented quarterback. But what I see is a guy with very similar issues to Justin. He takes a long time to get set up. A lot of the things that make Justin great are what make Caleb great. A lot of the things that Justin struggles with are what Caleb struggles with. So do you want to get a guy who is less athletic to play the quarterback position, maybe has more arm talent, maybe, but he's going to have the same issues? Here's the problem with the Bears. It's not so much that Justin Fields is not capable of doing what he did. It's not that he can't produce. We see the type of player that can produce in his way. We've seen guys like Justin Fields produce. In the 80s and 90s, Randall Cunningham did it. Michael Vick's done it. We see Lamar doing it now. We've seen Cam Newton do it. And we see Justin Fields doing it. Here's the difference. Out of all those guys I've talked about, Justin Fields is probably in the worst organization of all those guys and has the least amount of competency around him. You've got a team that should not have rehired their head coach. Should not have been rehired. I don't care what anyone says. That team should have been in the playoffs. And he had three of the worst losses I've ever seen. It's the first team ever to have a 90% chance in at least three games and lose all three. The only time that's ever happened in one season. So now your candidates for offensive coordinator are shortened. You're not going to get an Eric Bieniemy, who I think would be good for Fields. I think he could really bring him up. Now you're getting a guy like Cliff Kingsbury. Great. He's also one of the biggest chokers in the second half of the season in college and football that I've ever seen. He has under 30%. His win percentage in the second half of seasons in college and the NFL is under 30%.
Now, is this his head coach or coordinator?
As head coach in college and in the NFL.
Well, then good thing they're not interviewing for head coach.
But do you
But
want
if you're Matt Eberflus, though, if you're Matt Eberflus, you got to have your head on the swivel if they bring Cliff Kingsbury into town as offensive coordinator, knowing that he has NFL head coaching experience and is connected to the guy that you've been linked to in the draft or could potentially take in Caleb Williams. That's something you have to keep in mind. especially with Eberflus being a lame duck head coach right now.
Yeah. And I just think the problem itself is that Caleb could be a great player. Is he going to be a great player playing for this organization? And I can't say that because you have to. CJ Stroud, would he be as good if he was on the Bears? I can't say he would. I can't say he would. Because the reality is he goes to Houston, they've got a good offensive line. What they really needed was a quarterback. And they got their quarterback, but they had the line to back him up. You got D'Amico Ryans, who is a fantastic coach, gathering that team together. Eberflus is a nice head coach. He's got nice guy syndrome, which is a thing that for me has been the same thing to the Bears since basically 1993 when they hired Dave Wanstead. They've had the same problem for 30 years. They hired yes men.
Yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from with that. And it's like one thing I look at the Bears, and the thing is, like, we've all seen this movie before. And we've seen the movie with the nice coach, and we've seen the movie where they kind of set up these really talented young quarterbacks for failure by failing to put the right pieces around them. I don't necessarily, you brought a few things up, so I'm going to kind of go at them one at a time. First thing I'm going to bring up, Josh, is Eberflus. I was all about hiring Jim Harbaugh since he was at Stanford. Like, Harbaugh is the guy I wanted before he went to the 49ers. He is the guy I wanted the whole time he was at 49ers, the whole time he was at Michigan. Unfortunately, I'm not the GM. And so I have to let that one go. But the reason I became okay with keeping Eberflus around was the way they were able to finish the season. The defense actually turned into, down the stretch, a top 5 defense. Really, since, making the move for Montez Sweat, they had some of the best pass rush in the NFL. But between, Jalen Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, like, that defense started playing well enough where it no longer was the problem. And if you look at what Green Bay did to Dallas versus what Green Bay did to the Chicago Bears, you can see that the Bears defense is actually definitely not the issue. And Eberflus has done a lot to build that. So I'm good at what he's built in the second half of the season. And the other thing, and this goes to the whole I've seen this movie before piece, is continuity. And the issue we always see is they get this good young quarterback and then they set him up to fail by not having a good offensive line and not providing the right weapons. And the defense usually is vaunted and dangerous, and it's starting to look a lot like the defense we're seeing right now. But then it's the same old thing. And right now I look at what Poles is doing with this team, and I really like it. The reason I like it is because it makes the most football sense as far as build goes since that kind of early 2000s era when the Bears had an elite offensive line and an elite defensive line, because that Super Bowl run team, they had an amazing run game, obviously, and we all talk about Muhsin Muhammad or Thomas Jones, whoever it may be, as far as the star power they had on offense. But what about Reuben Brown, Olin Kreutz, and John Tate, and some of those guys who were paving the way for these big rushing yards and all that? And right now I see the Bears, and they have some good young pieces on the offensive line. The problem is these pieces are super young. And like, there are exceptions to the rule. You have your Quentin Nelsons and you have your guys who kind of can come in and they're like, this guy is a star now. And you get that on the offensive line sometimes. And you get that from like the right programs, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame. A lot of times they can just churn out these amazing, big physical offensive linemen. And I don't think the work's done there yet, but they have enough pieces in place where I can at least see what the vision is. And then right now, it's a matter of finding the right weapons to protect and emphasize Justin Fields. So make his talents come to, complete potential. I think they still got a little bit of work to do on offensive line, but not is like, it needs to get a lot better. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it requires drastic personnel changes because some of these guys are already really good. But then obviously you got getting the wide receivers. And that's where continuity becomes extremely important because you know whose opinion matters more than any three of us about who they want in quarterback? DJ Moore. And if DJ Moore is saying, I want Justin Fields, and this is the guy they just traded a number 1 pick for, then you give him Justin Fields. Now, going off that, if you watch the Bears press conferences, you wonder, did Eberflus maybe unintentionally tilt his hand a little bit when he started talking about how this team can build around Justin Fields? And then you got to start to think about, this isn't checkers for these NFL executives, it's chess. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. They're going to be intentionally giving off things to kind of take teams off their trail. A great example could be Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe they're interested in hiring Cliff Kingsbury because he's got a great resume and he did a really nice job with Kyler Murray and he's done some good things with the quarterback position in his time. But maybe they think that it's going to make other NFL executives think that, oh, they're going with Caleb Williams. Maybe it's a message to the Cardinals and the Patriots to say, hey, we're going to take this guy. So, better ante up and make sure you can get him at 1, And so it's also kind of that smoke and mirrors into effect there. But I, like most Bears fans, I got my guy. The man every Bears fan seems to want in the building, and more importantly, the guy it seems like DJ Moore and Justin Fields want in the building. And also, fun little connection, DJ Moore and Marvin Harrison Jr. even ran track in high school together. The continuity you can bring in by having 3 dudes who already like each other. Because how often is the problem with star quarterbacks and star wide receivers that eventually there becomes a rift? If you have 3 dudes who actually are friends now and they're all really damn good, you ride with it. So I feel like at that point for the Bears, it's about just don't screw that up. Do the obvious thing. Go get the guy your quarterback wants, the wide receiver who wants to be there, who's friends with the other star wide receiver. And then you look at the other option as far as if you're thinking about whether it is Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., which in essence, it will be, unless they're somewhat how going to get 1 and 2, then you got to start thinking about, and I don't know how much is Twitter noise versus reality. And there has been some unfair and dishonest journalism on Caleb Williams. It seems like a lot of times they've had people kind of put words in his mouth, or I've even seen some quotes come out as fake. So I think we want to be savvy when we evaluate that kind of information. But that being said, if there's even a shred of truth into the stuff about Caleb Williams not wanting to be a Chicago Bear, then don't get him. Don't bring in someone who doesn't want to be here. I think we just saw, in an extreme fashion with Chase Claypool. Just don't bring in a dude who's going to be having a negative attitude when you're trying to build a winning culture. And it really starts on the ground floor. Before you can even win in anything, you have to have a positive attitude. And that's any sport, any team, any situation. And so if you got a choice between 2 elite prospects, one of them wants to be there and the other doesn't, then I feel like you want to go with the guy who wants to be there. Now, that being said, you go get the capital you can. If you're trading down from that number 1 pick, you go get a haul and you trade down to number 2, or you trade down to number 3, but you also don't play with your food. Go get Marvin Harrison. And even if that means taking him at number 1 to make sure you take him. But if you know that, you can drop down to 2 and still get your man, then do it.
And that's what they can do. They can drop down to 2 or 3 and get Marvin Harrison Jr. And you can get a haul full of draft picks and potentially an edge rusher or another wide receiver to pair beside the likes of DJ Moore and Marvin Harrison Jr. And you talk about how relationships matter. Think about when the Bengals drafted Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow went to the front office and told him, "Hey, I got a friend at LSU by the name of Jamar Chase that's coming out. I would love to play with him." And what happened in year one of their time together? They went to the Super Bowl. They got within a couple of plays of winning the championship, and they still are one of the top teams in the AFC when fully healthy. So when I look at their situation, I would prefer for them to go in the direction to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, if you get Caleb, all the stuff about whether or not he wants to come here, it's never came out of his mouth, as you mentioned. But that's why I'm with Ryan Poles from the standpoint of when we do our homework and our due diligence as an organization, we're going to check out not only his talent, but his attitude and his character, which means a lot, especially when Justin Fields came in here and was maligned very often by a lot of fans here, even by people in the media. And nevertheless, he took it on the chin. He's very professional about it when he easily could have took the low road and said, you know what, I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to ball out. And at the same time, win the confidence of my teammates as a leader and show them that I have what it takes to lead them to the promised land, not only with my leadership ability, but with my ability on the field. And I think he's getting better and better as the years progress. And I think he only will continue to do so once he develops some continuity with a coaching staff that seeks to dictate a game plan around his strengths and his talents, and not just keep him positioned stationary in the pocket.
Yeah. And that goes to the offensive line piece too, where like they just got to protect him better. And
Yeah,
you know, like I like Braxton Jones. I love Tevin Jenkins. Nate Davis, mixed bag. Sometimes I feel like he's a bridge player, you know. I don't feel like because he's still relatively young, but they could do better. But if I see Nate Davis back on the offensive line, I'm not gonna be mad about it. I'm gonna be mad about Feeney, you know. But and then bring it down outright. Like that's obviously a guy they have a lot of faith in, and he's an animal. He's an absolute animal. And so they got some big maulers on that front line. And you also kind of see that like this team wants to be a power run team with speed on the outside, and they want to build it that way. And frankly, that's just plain fun. And so, you know, you saw it in glimpses. Obviously, this is like the three of us might be able to rush for a few yards against the Panthers. But, you know, we saw with Dante Foreman and what they were able to do against in that Panthers game, like who they kind of want to be on offense. And then, you know, you got your Moore, your Komet. So it just makes you wonder like what kind of guys they can kind of target in there. And then in that second pick, I'd love for him to try to take a swing at, you know, a Saquon Barkley in that second pick. And the thing is, I'm not trying to dictate what they do. Obviously, I don't have that kind of power anyway, but like whatever they do, I want it to work out. But I would love for them in that second pick, you either get an edge rusher, you get somebody really good for the offensive line, or you turn that into Saquon Barkley, or, you know, like a dark horse, I think, who'd be a great fit, given he has the right fit as far as the financial aspect of this goes, could be Derrick Henry. Because then you bring in a guy who's a good fit. Like if you consider the speed of like everything else they're doing with that offense and the things the defense has to worry about as far as Justin Fields using his legs, assuming they keep Khalil Herbert on even, and then the speed you have on the offense of outside with, you know, with Moore and Harrison, and we'll see if they even keep Mooney. But then if you have to worry about that speed and then the power of a guy like Derrick Henry, that could be really interesting. But Henry, I feel like more realistically is going to look for an opportunity with a team like the Bills or the Ravens or the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, me personally with the second pick, which would be number 9 overall as we currently talking, or they trade up or whatever, I would go in the direction, as you said, of an interior offensive lineman or edge rusher. two guys that come to the top of my mind are Dallas Turner out of Alabama, who you put him beside Montez Sweat, it could get real nasty. And I think that's when their defense really turned the corner, is when Montez came, because they had trouble getting to the quarterback. I think Yannick Ngouke was a team leader in sacks with like 3 sacks before Montez came over here. He got about 6 or 6.5 to close out the season. And that's what brought about a lot of the interceptions and picks that you saw from Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Johnson, and the like. But the running back that I would have my eyes on if I'm the Bears is Trey Benson out of Florida State. Trey Benson is a running back that could be a home run hitter. And that's what this offense is sorely missing. Everybody talks about the offensive line. Everybody talks about the need for an edge rusher and even another corner potentially with the situation involving Jalen Johnson, who I believe will be franchise tagged. But if you could get Trey Benson in the mix, a guy who hasn't fumbled the ball in the last 2 seasons, I believe, at Florida State, a guy that gets to the rack hard and runs hard and can break out explosive plays for 25 plus yards or more on the ground, and is a workhorse running back, a guy that you can feed the ball 25 to 30 times a game if you need to, and take a ton of pressure off of Justin. With an improved offensive line, it could get real intriguing here.
Yeah, I mean, I really think I agree with you guys. For that second pick, you got to go edge rusher or offensive lineman. Honestly, my thought is this. You got to fix center. Absolutely. You got to address that day 2, or you got to address that free agency. However you can, you got to address it. Nate Davis was okay. I think Braxton Jones, I actually think I saw a stat before where he's actually a top 10 lineman in the league, and he was actually playing his pass block success percentage was actually top 10 in the NFL this year, which I found quite surprising. He's actually a pretty solid left tackle. You know, it's just a matter of what I want to see is I want to see Tevin Jenkins and Darnell Wright on the same side. That's what I want to see, first of all. I need to see that. You've got 2 incredibly good players. Darnell Wright's a hit. Darnell Wright was a great pick. And I saw it all year. For me, I feel like the Green Bay game was an anomaly to what I was seeing from that offensive line the last half of the season. It was playing really good. And then, of course, they play Green Bay, and like usual, everything just falls apart. You know, but that's just the way things go. For me, I'm thinking, what's going to help this team? They need another pass rusher, and they need more help on the interior. So go after those guys. Now, I agree with you guys in this sense. I think we do need a running back. I don't want to take on a Saquon Barkley salary or a Derrick Henry salary. I think Derrick Henry's a guy who may take a pay cut and go somewhere. He may go to a championship.
Yeah.
To try and he might go somewhere like Kansas City. He might go somewhere like Buffalo. He might go to those places just to try and win a ring. You might see him in Dallas next year. You have no idea. He would fit in Dallas, and that would kind of be a Dallas kind of player. But for me, I just think that right now, Ryan Poles knows that if he takes a quarterback, he's going to have 2 or 3 years with them. If he keeps Fields, he'll have 2 years with him, 3 years with him. But his job, he's got to hit this. And I will give him credit. He did a great job drafting last year. That DJ Moore trade was phenomenal. Tyreek Stevenson is a great cornerback. DJ Moore, over 1,300 yards this year. You've got a guy who's a true number 1, and you pair him with a guy like a Marvin Harrison Jr., you've got a scary 1-2 punch. People don't talk enough about Cole Kmet. He's one of the top 10 tight ends in the National Football League, and that does not get discussed because he's playing here, and everyone's like, well, they don't throw the football in Chicago. No, this guy, what did he catch, 76 passes this year?
Also, I could not agree more, man. And the thing about that is that dude is just plain strong.
He's strong, and he catches football. He's got great hands.
Anybody other than like Rob Gronkowski or maybe Algie Crumpler, if we're going in the time machine, as far as a guy who's been able to be so strong with the ball in his hands, making some of these catches. And golly, is that when you look at like what guys like Lamar Jackson or Colin Kaepernick and some of these mobile quarterbacks, they need a security blanket, sure-handed tight end. So I'm all in on Kmet. And it took me a long time because he wasn't so great his first few years in the league, but man, he's got me sold.
One thing I noticed, and I will say this, and I noticed about Justin Fields, if he trusts that you can catch the ball, he will get you the football.
Yep.
And here's the problem. He's only got 2 guys on the team he trusted the entire year. That's DJ Moore and that's Cole Kmet. Everybody else he didn't have any trust in, which I'm a little surprised he didn't trust Darnell Mooney a little bit more. I was a little surprised by that because he was good for him when he needed him to be. But nevertheless, you get him 3. If you have 3 really good targets and Marvin Harrison Jr., Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, that's what you need. And then if we see a guy like maybe Tyler Scott at least develop to at least be an okay number 4, that gives you 4 targets to be able to throw the football to. And the reality is, and I've been looking at this, and I'm not saying that he's Lamar Jackson, but if you look at the stats between Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson, they're not that different. The difference is he's got John Harbaugh, and he's got a great offensive line, and he has a great organization around him that drafts guys to put around him that let him become who he is. If you put him in Chicago, he'd be having very similar struggles to what Justin Fields is having right now, because Lamar and Justin are very similar. They're great athletes, but is Lamar the best pocket passer? No. What he has is a good O-line he trusts to let him sit in the pocket and make the reads he needs to make and throw that football. And what I see is when Justin has time to throw, he makes those throws. Now, does he have plenty of times where he overthrows guys? And I go, oh, yes, got to work on that. It's got to be crisper. So does every quarterback. So can he be perfect? No. Does he have enough where, to me, it's like this. Is Justin Fields capable of getting the Bears down the field enough for them to score 24 points in a game? Yes.
That Packers game, man, like if you turn those 3 field goals into 3 touchdowns, damn it. We're having a different conversation right now.
But here's the question. Is Lamar Jackson doing any better if he's got that pressure on him against, like he had against Green Bay? No. He's probably not doing it much better.
But like you said, though, his offensive line. He has the best offensive line, if not one of the best offensive lines in all of football. Ronnie Stanley's are all pro. He has a Pro Bowl center. Lamar alone can account for your running game, but you don't have to when you have a Gus Edwards back there and a Justice Hill. And now you got Dalvin Cook making plays in the playoffs for you who they pick up off the tree. Like it's different. And then when I look at my only issue is this, really, when it comes to Bears fans. There are so many Bears fans that are looking at other teams and like, well, I want that. And it don't work like that. Football is the ultimate team game. Every part and every piece plays a role. And while the quarterback gets the glory when you win and they get the boos when you lose, it's so many components that play a role in their success. You take Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator from Houston, for C.J. Stroud. He's worked with Brock Purdy. He's worked with several other quarterbacks and had success. That's why he's going to be a hot commodity on the head coaching market, where there are several openings right now. And he's going to be the hottest man in the interview room. Like you said earlier, Josh, D'Amico Ryans. Where's your leadership? And that's where I think the Bears have to find a way to foster that and figure out how to close games. You can't expect for quarterback Jesus to save you every time. You talked about the 3 games that they blew. It was a couple games they blew where they had to battle one with the time of possession, and they had 3+ takeaways. But why did they win? Because they couldn't close games. And that's what this team has to learn. And I think that's the next step that they have to take in order to grow. But a lot of fans are so impatient and they're results oriented when they look at the end game as opposed to the long game. Ryan Poles is playing the long game. The question is, do you believe in him enough to trust his vision and allow yourself to see it through? I personally do. I don't know if fans do, but either way he goes, I'm a sit back and I'm a wait, because he's at least giving me some reason to say he's trying to build a competent organization with the moves that he's made thus far.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, especially just considering what I was saying earlier about the continuity. Like, be patient enough to give this a chance to work,
Yeah.
And it's crazy, and I know things have really changed, but if you go back and you look at footballreference.com and you look at John Elway, in the modern day, he wouldn't have ever gotten a chance to go win Super Bowls later in his career because they would have given up on him already.
Mhm.
But, you know, in my 30 or so years of being a football fan, 25, 30 years, I've seen the patience for quarterbacks get shorter and shorter because it used to be you put a guy on the bench for his whole first year, you groom him, and then halfway through his second year, you let him in with like little water floaties and see if he can even just not sink. And then you teach him to swim. Now they get these guys and they're throwing them right into the pool. You know, all right, swim for us. And it's the hardest position in pro sports. And you know what? Here's the deal. You know why Chicago Bears quarterbacks don't succeed? Because it's the hardest place to play in the world. It's the hardest position in pro sports. And if you are the Chicago Bears quarterback, I genuinely think that is the hardest job in pro sports. Why? Because the relationship this team has with the forward pass, the issues the Bears have had, like it's like the Cubs when they didn't win a World Series. Like every single year they didn't win a World Series, finally got up to 108 years. And for Bears quarterback, it's like, when are we going to have a good one? Because if you go back and you look at Chicago Bears quarterback ratings, Walter Payton, the running back, is a higher QBR than a handful of these first round draft pick quarterbacks. They've never had a 30 touchdown pass season. Jay Cutler, who never made a Pro Bowl as a Chicago Bear, has the highest yards, touchdowns, QBR in Chicago Bears history. And so you go to a place where there's been nothing but failure and at times pretty toxic fan base as well. The way we treat quarterbacks as Chicago Bears fans, we destroy their confidence. Sometimes we run them out of the city. And you know what? Rex Grossman, he was super talented. Mitchell Trubisky, he was super talented. I'm not saying that like they were necessarily the guy, but I am saying that they probably could have had an easier go if they were under the likes of Andy Reid, you know, if they were in a different situation. And so it is about like, how can you set these guys up for success? Well, how about it's time we learn from our mistakes as a franchise, especially considering the quarterback position, and make some adjustments and just try doing it differently this time, because we got to give this guy some time to develop, because Fields, he's got me sold. He's got me sold that game. I want to say week 17 or so, where he got sacked twice, but didn't. And then he escaped and he ran for like 17 yards. Like, I want this guy. He's electric. At worst, he's fun to watch. He might not be the guy who's going to like you said, Gabriel, it's the ultimate team sport. Like, I don't need him to single-handedly take us to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, but I feel like he can definitely be the quarterback good enough for, with the rest of the team's great, win the Super Bowl. It's not going to be tomorrow though. And so,
And you brought up a key word, development. And that's something that Bears fans don't talk about enough, or Chicago sports fans don't talk about enough, is development. And that's why we run a lot of players outside of the city before we allow them to cultivate and become the stars that they could possibly be. I wasn't sold on Mitch Trubisky. I was not sold on a few other quarterbacks that came here. But Jay Cutler was a quarterback that was not developed here. He had solid talent long before he came here. And when they traded for him, he showed how sorely he was missed, how much Bears fans miss quality quarterbacks. Because in my opinion, Jay Cutler is still the best quarterback in Bears history. Even if you don't go by the numbers and you go by the highlight reels and the clips,
it's either 6 or 9 for me.
Yeah, but like Justin, man, he is an electrifying player. And for somebody who is a native of the city, born and raised, and spent all my life here, I have never in my life been pleased to see the selection of a quarterback the way I was with Justin Fields. And then when they put him on the field and to see the promise that he showed and his abilities, man, it's fun to watch. I I haven't had too much fun in my life watching 3 and 14 teams, but I did a couple years ago when he rushed for 1,000 yards because
Yeah.
every week it was must see TV. I hadn't seen a quarterback with that dynamic ever in Soldier Field that was wearing the navy blue and orange.
Let's get closer to wrapping this thing up here. I do want to just ask a few questions though, and I feel like inevitably we're gonna have to circle back closer to the draft. But free agents, are there any guys that you guys really have on your short list at any position that you really feel like you want the Bears to go get this offseason?
I'll let you go ahead, Gabriel. I'm sure you got a few.
I say Geno Stone from the Ravens. You need a safety, an impact presence, a guy that can, go up and get it and make key tackles and plays to stop the opposition. That's the guy that I would target.
And
You
would
could
that
also
mean getting rid
target a
of Eddie
Saquon
Jackson?
Barkley as well.
That would mean getting rid of Eddie Jackson, I'm assuming, on Stone?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I feel like it's time to part ways with Eddie Jackson. He had a great 2018 campaign, but since then has regressed. I love him as a person, good brother, but Geno Stone out of Baltimore, a guy that's a winner right now in a proven situation, I think it help his ball club. You put him beside Brisker, it can get real nice.
And who's your second guy? Sorry to cut you off there.
Saquon Barkley, I would look at him, and then the other guy would be Brian Burns out of Carolina.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Love all those. I mean, kind of, they speak for themselves. Resume speaks for themselves. Like, you got Saquon Barkley over here, and you have the mojo has been fully restored, if you will, like for what the Bears are supposed to be all about. Great defense and the best running back in the NFL. Because that's if the Bears are their best, it's like they got a Matt Forte or a Walter Payton or a Gale Sayers. Like it's a long history. I got a few guys in mind. Josh, you want to throw a few at me?
Yeah, I was going to agree with Gabe. I want to see a guy like Brian Burns or Josh Allen from Jacksonville, unless they might franchise tag him. So we'll see. But I really think, you got to attack the running back position. You need to attack that edge position. It all depends on who they draft. Because I look at this team, the linebackers are fine. I don't mind Sanborn, Edwards, Edmond. Those guys are doing very well. You got great corners already. I think Eddie's on the chopping block. I think he will be cut. And Jaquan Brisker, just fine at safety. I think he's a very fine safety. So I'm looking at upgrading safety. I'm looking at upgrading the edge, the offensive line. I'm looking at running backs. Now, you can upgrade the offensive line and running backs in the draft or edge and running backs, but then you got to look in this free agency at updating that interior line, specifically at the center spot. Now, the question is, how much is a guy like Saquon going to cost you? And that is where things are going to get tricky. And for me, the thing that the Bears I would love to see is the thing I loved about the Bears' last great running back, Mr. Forte. That guy caught every pass. And he was the best receiving back in all of football, as well as one of the best running backs in football when he was doing his thing. Saquon Barkley, not quite that guy. He hasn't had more than 400 receiving yards since his second year in the league. And now he caught balls 2 years ago. He caught 57 passes. I give him that. But, not quite what he was doing before. But does he have the capability to be that receiving back? And yes, he can be. And it doesn't matter if you put him out there and he's catching balls, 5-yard route, those 5-yard curls that you get when you're in a shotgun formation. He just catches it and does his thing. Fine by me. For me, it's just a matter of let's see where they draft. Obviously, free agency starts first. They're going to address their needs first, and then where they address those needs in free agency, because the Bears are going to have, I believe, top 5 cap space in the league, and they still got it. Yeah. It's going to be cut with Jalen Johnson, who's probably going to be the highest paid cornerback in the league, or at least darn near close to it, because that's what he's going to want. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where they go, because we're going to see what they do in free agency first. They're going to address those needs there. And then that's going to tell us what they're going to do in the draft, especially with that number 9 selection. So if they go get an edge in free agency, they're probably going lineman at that number 9 pick. You never know. They might, if they choose to go Marvin Harrison Jr., I think they'll definitely go with a offensive lineman at number 9. And then on day 2, I think they will draft a running back with their pick.
I think I like what both y'all are saying. Because yes, it's about getting good value. I do think it's time to say goodbye to Eddie Jackson just for the money the man's being paid versus the production we're getting, or you renegotiate. Because I think Eddie Jackson's good enough, but not for what he's making. I think what is he making, like 18 mil? He's making. I'm gonna look that up. Eddie Jackson's salary. But the dude's making a mint right now. Okay, base salary. Yeah, he's like right around a cap hit of 18 mil for a guy who's a 8 to 9 million player at this juncture in his career. So we either restructure or see have a good career, Cody Whitehair. This man is also making too much money for what he's providing. And so I want to clear even more space. And so it doesn't have to be a choice between do we want two of three, a running back, an edge rusher, or interior line help? Like, let's get all three by clearing the guys who aren't worth what they're making. Big target for me would be Connor Williams, the center for the Miami Dolphins. Still young enough to be a key contributor for years to come. And you can ideally like get the line set, not just for this year, for the next 5 in this offseason. And so I would love to see him targeted. And then as far as just getting a little bit more heat on the outside, Brian Burns, golly, would he be amazing? It'll be interesting to see what happens with Chase Young. Like there's no guarantee he stays in San Fran. I'm sure he will. But like, if he doesn't, get the checkbook ready, get him in there. I like Jonathan Greenard from the Texans. I think he could help a ton. That's a guy who's just going to bring a ton of pressure. Good run defense, good pass defense. Bryce Huff from the Jets, that guy's gonna give you 10 sacks a season. And I think they really need help on that right end position. And then another name I've seen linked to the Bears quite a bit is Christian Wilkins.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think Christian Wilkins would be a versatile and powerful guy you can bring off the edge sometimes, or you bring right through the middle. But that's kind of my short list of guys. But if there was a top priority, it'd probably be either Christian Wilkins or addressing that center position, because Fields, the biggest issue with Fields was the guys blocking for him. And I feel like when we're talking about developing him, even it needs to be like, how good can he even get if they're not going to get him the right kind of protection. So that's where that is. And then I'm going to throw one more dark horse at you here. Laviska Shenault. All right. This guy was the 2nd round pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars a few years ago. Big, physical wide receiver that the Panthers actually used a decent amount at running back. And so did Colorado. He was actually their goal line back. And so I got familiar with him when I was covering Colorado a few years ago. And I've just kind of seen him not really fit into the right situation. He's had some health issues as well. His time with the 2 cat teams, the Jaguars and the Panthers. But I think maybe it's time to stop being a cat and be a bear. Because if you have him as even a short yardage kind of guy who can give Fields an opportunity like, hey, get me the ball with a little bit of space and I'll get you 10 to 15 to 20 yards. Man's hard to bring down. He would add a very interesting element of physicality to the wide receiver room. And I think he would absolutely thrive in the slot after you get in more with Harrison. And then the defense worrying about Komet. And then all of a sudden you got this animal physical wide receiver in Laviska Shenault. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. Well, fellas, it's a long Bears talk. Anything else we want to hit? Any comments, closing comments before we wrap it all up?
No, not at this time. Outside of, you can check out the State of Gay podcast on Spotify exclusively there. Talk about everything within sports, entertainment, pop culture, and stuff. You can find me there and follow me at What Gay Said on X and Twitter.
Appreciate the time, Adam. Always good to be on here and spend time with my boys talking sports. Love it.
Yeah, a real fun one. I know we always are talking basketball, so it felt nice to finally talk some football with you guys. Not, on the group chat, but like actually on a pod. So I appreciate you guys coming on. And yeah, we'll see what happens, and we'll have to circle back once we see where a few of these chips land in the free agency, and then once again for the draft. Thank you everyone for listening, watching, however you're enjoying Foux and Friends. Please subscribe, please like the channel, and tell a friend to tell a friend. We'll see you next time.